All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started now on our watercolor feather tutorial. To help us out today, I've got some feather shapes here, as well as an example that I painted yesterday. So this is gonna be a fun project, great for any beginner, and I really don't want you to fret about making things perfect. Feathers occur in nature, so they are by nature imperfect, but really just want to have some fun today, mixing some colors, getting to know your watercolor, and end up with a cute little painting at the end. I want to say welcome to anyone joining from the Watercolor for Real Beginners Facebook group. Really excited to have you here today. This is our weekly prompt to paint feathers, and so thought it would be a great time to do another live tutorial. If you're interested in learning watercolor and would like to join that group, check us out on Facebook, Watercolor for Real Beginners. All right, so in addition to my reference image of some feathers and my example painting, I have, of course, my watercolor paints. I'm using the Winsor Newton Cotman watercolors in my pan here. I also have a variety of watercolor brushes. We'll mostly be using our round brushes today. I've also got some 2 jars here of clean water, and it's important with some of these, we're going to want to pre-wet our paper a little bit, so as best you can, try to keep one of your jars clean so that we can use that to add some clean water in places. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump right in. So as I mentioned, feathers come in all shapes and sizes and lots of different colors. You can Google different pictures of feathers if that helps you come up with some ideas, but I really just thought that this would be a fun project to combine some colors that I like. You can pick whatever colors you think will work best for your painting. And then let's look at the shapes here. So I really like this graphic here because it shows what how we can leave the kind of stem piece of our feather white. And so this is a really great reference for that reason, but you don't have to do that. This is really helpful to give us the idea of these shapes. So each one of our feathers has a stem, and I don't think it's called a stem. It's probably called something else, but it's basically a long curved line. And so one of the things that to warm up today that you might want to do is practice some of your C curves and try to make some really fine lines. And we can do that a little bit here. I can show you how to warm up and practice that. I've just grabbed a scrap piece of watercolor paper, and I'm going to go ahead and grab one of my smaller brushes. So if you use a round brush, it should have a nice tip on it. I'm going to grab my number 6 here. And the first thing that we're going to do is just practice these C curves. So I'm going to wet up my paints. I like to do that with a spray bottle. And just go ahead and get them nice and wet. You want to have a little bit puddle in each color. And that's going to help activate our paints. And we always want to make sure we have enough water when we're painting with watercolor. So get everything nice and wet there. I also do have a cloth here to to dip my brush on if I want to remove any water from my brush. But the first thing we're going to do here for practice is try these curved lines. And so any color on your palette, I've got kind of this messy, muddy gray, a bunch of colors mixed together here, so I'll just use this. And practice with a vertical hold. You're going to hold your brush up and down, making some just very thin curved lines. It's a good idea to warm up before you attempt a painting. Just like anything else, it's, practice really helps our brains make that connection and build up a skill. So practice those, and maybe even practice making one side really small and making it get bigger. And this is a good way to just practice brush control. You can see there you got lots of different sizes and shapes of lines. So that's a good warm up for today. We're gonna use that line as the base for our feathers. All right, so I'm sticking with my number 6 brush, and you could, draw these out. I'm not going to do that today. We're going to be really loose with it. Today it's going to be more about kind of mixing some different colors on the paper and watching them blend. But to start off, we'll start with that curve. So putting my reference image to the side, you want to mix up a darker color. So you'll have you at least want to have a dark color for your stem, or if you want to leave it white, you can do that as well. We'll take a look at a couple different techniques here today, but I'm going to grab maybe a little bit of I've got neutral tint, and I'm just going to add that to like maybe a blue. I'll do that over here on the dark side of my palette. I'm going to add a little bit of Prussian blue. Just so I get a nice dark color. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is grab some of that paint. You want to mix it up on your palette. Make sure you have enough, but you want to make sure that your brush isn't too wet. If it's dripping, this is going to be a little bit more difficult. So you could just kind of rub the brush on your palette or dip it on your paper. And we're going to start with a nice long C curve. There you go. Pretty simple, right? And then with the feather, it's actually going to be a little bit thicker on the bottom here. So I'm just going to go in the second stroke and kind of add that in. All right, so there is the basis for our feather. Now we get to start adding in some color, and we do want to work a little bit quickly because I want to get some nice blending happening here. So I'm grabbing my bigger brush, a number 10. And for our first feather, let's go ahead and grab a pink. I have Opera Rose here. And the first thing I'm going to do is start at the base of, or where I want the feather to start. So we want to leave a little bit of that stem. So I'm going to go straight up on both sides. On the second side though, I want to maybe leave a little bit of white space. And this is just the basic shape of our feather. And again, feathers come in lots of different shapes and sizes. So if you want to make this a little bit more similar to the reference here, what you'll do is just kind of take some strokes in from the side, bring them in. So a feather has these nice breaks in it from time to time. And so you can kind of recreate those along your side, grab some more paint, and do that along the other side. Just kind of pulling that in. You see with some really simple strokes, we're able to get that beautiful feather shape. Now for this one, I did start with that really dark color. I think I'm going to add in some purple though. So again, rinsing off my brush, I'm going to go into my purple. I'm going to use the color I have is Dioxazine Purple. And so I'm going to take this in a little bit thicker paint than what I had with the pink. So go right into your pan, but again, make sure you're not dripping. So I'm just going to kind of get some of that paint off. And I'm going to go over my little stem again with this purple. Bring that into the center here. And anywhere you stop is where you're going to get one of those blossoms or bleeds, whatever you want to call it. But that's also a really fun technique for these feathers because it will feather out. So I'm just going to kind of run that up the left and right side of the middle here. And then I'm going to kind of dry my brush off a little bit, or rinse it off and then tap it. Doesn't have to be completely out of paint, but now we're going to use the tip of our brush to kind of pull out some of that color to form some of the lines we would be seeing in our feather. There's lots of different ways to add color to these feathers. We'll try out a few of them, but this is really fun. Just kind of pulling that purple out into the pink and watching them blend together. It's really beautiful letting watercolor be watercolor. If you want to add more or less of the color, you can either pick up some additional color. I'm going to go back in with my pink and maybe put in a little extra bit of that on the tips of some of these areas on the outside of my feather. Maybe a little bit more at the base. And then I think this would also be really interesting if I did some purple dots. I'm just kind of going here and I'm again taking not so wet paint and putting it there in the areas that are already wet. And so you're seeing it kind of explode and giving a really great texture. Now, again, you want to kind of keep this evenly wet as you go. If some of your areas are drying, you can just kind of go back in with some water. re-wet it up. If you lift up any color, you can drop that back in like so. Maybe add some pink little dots around here. You can see this is a really fun way to watch the watercolor blend and bloom and do its watercolory things. So we can let that dry and then also add some detail later. But one of the things that really helps make the feather look feathery also is some of these little bits at the bottom. So while this is still wet, we can use just the tip of our brush to kind of pull some of those out. You want to go away from the little stem, just like we did with our bigger strokes, but these are just gonna be little fun strokes, and you can even like wet up your brush and maybe kind of blend them out a little bit so they kind of have a little bit of a gradient, giving some nice texture and adding some movement to your feather. So there's one feather. Another technique I like to do is to leave that white section in the middle. So in order to do that, we're going to kind of look at this reference image so you see whichever side the stem is on, you make a curve, and then we'll actually leave that a little bit of white space right next to it. So for this one, maybe I'll grab a turquoise, aqua color, mix that up here on my palette. Again, using my dirty water jar while I'm mixing, and then again, there'll be times where we want to drop in some of that clean water. So for this one, very similar, and maybe we'll go the other direction. So let's start at the top, make our stem, and you can make it a little bit wider at the bottom as we did on the last one. Okay. And then we'll decide kind of how far that's going to go, probably to about here. And on the right side, I'm going to go ahead and connect it. So same idea, we're going to go ahead with our strokes and start connecting, leaving some of those gaps. Okay. And if you make like one side of the feather not as wide as the other side, that also helps make it look a little bit more like a feather. Okay, now we're going to go on the other side, but first we're going to start at the top and put a stroke down that's parallel to that line. So we've got our nice white line, and then we'll do the same thing, kind of coming in right up to that line, filling it in. And also, this is a similar shape to the one we just did, but if you want to, at this point, also use the very tip of your brush, you can add a few more like little kind of wild feathery bits. I'm pulling out the color toward the edge. Okay, but again, the key is to make sure that this stays nice and wet. So if yours is starting to dry like mine, go ahead and fill that back in, and we're going to add a second color. So for this aqua one, I think it might be fun to add a bit of green. So I'm going to use today my emerald green. It's a very bright green. Okay, and again here picking up a little bit more paint than water. And for this, I think we'll add some of the green to the tip. Okay, and then maybe even to the bottom. And then maybe like along just in some kind of random places, maybe pull out some of that color from the center like we did before, doing some layering. And I think that looks nice, but now that I've got that bright color down, I'd really like a little bit more of the blue. So again, just going back in with some wet color on my brush, dropping that in where I'd like to see it. And you can even start to blend some of these colors together on your page just by kind of mixing them around with your brush. Okay. And then of course we want to do those little feathery bits at the bottom. Doesn't have to be perfect. I think it's pretty obvious this is a feather. And then maybe too, we can do some of those dots. I like the dots. And so where I've got the blue, maybe I'll do some green dots. And then on the other side, I'll grab my blue, do some blue dots. And try different effects and techniques so you can add salt. You could add drops of water if you want your, I've got a lot of paint here on my page. If you want yours to be a little bit more transparent, add more water to your wash. And we'll actually try one that's maybe a little bit more transparent and a bit of a different shape this time. So for this one, let's choose a smaller brush. So I got my number 6, and so I'll do pink and maybe like a dark brown. So I have burnt umber. I'm gonna grab a little bit of my burnt umber. I want it to be a little bit darker than that, so I'm going to put that on my palette here, and then grab a tiny bit of my neutral tint and just use that to darken up the color. If it gets too dark, I'm just going to add a little bit more brown. Okay, so now we've got a nice color here, and we're going to draw that stem piece. So draw that in. And this one's going to be a little bit more of a skinny feather, and maybe less pieces have fallen off of it. But we'll get a nice blend as long as we keep this wet while we work. So pretty quickly, I'm going to go back to my larger brush. Again, it's a size 10. I've got some Opera Rose on here, but I just added a little bit of quinacridone red, and I got kind of this like darker pink color. And I'm going to dip my brush in a little bit of water so it lightens the wash a bit, and then just going to go ahead and bring that straight. Oop, not enough water. Let's try that again. Go ahead and bring that straight down. And do the same thing. I recommend you wash off your brush and grab some more pigment here. Otherwise, you might have the brown mixing in. So we've got that nice light wash. It didn't work quite fast enough. My brown didn't bleed like I wanted it to, but that's okay. We can always add more in later. But for this feather, to show you how to do that, I'll grab that dark color that I mixed. Okay, and remember, anywhere where you drop your brush, or if I'm going to make a stroke going up, if I lift up my brush at the top, there's going to be a little bleed there. So I'm going to start here and move down since we're doing wet on wet. And just using the tip of my brush, I'm going to go back in here, add some more of that color. You can see it's starting to move around a bit, and then we can drop in some of this maybe around some of the edges. I've got the tip of the feather here, maybe at the base of the feather. And this one's a lot less separated than the others. And then maybe on some of the edges. Just whatever sounds good to you. And then we can also add a little bit of extra detail while this is still wet, and still get a little bit of blending by using a vertical hold, and then we'll pull out some lines to show some of those veins, right? Okay, so very different type of feather here. I feel like some of my feather still did dry kind of quick, so I'm just adding in some water and kind of moving it around. If you'd like to add another color at this point, you can definitely do that. But you can also go back in and add some detail once these have dried. So my middle one is still pretty wet, and honestly, I feel like we kind of lost the stem. I got all these bits here, but it ends up looking like kind of a thick stem, so we can go back and fix that. But maybe on this pink and purple one, we've got a little bit more dry, so I'm going to go back into my dioxazine purple, get a little bit more concentrated version of the color, and then here we can add some of those variegated detail lines. This is wet on dry, so you're going to get a much more crisp effect here, so great for detail. And also at this point, you could grab maybe some more of your pink and add some more wispies to the edge. It's a technical term, wispies. You can just kind of like pull out some additional color or go back in and blend some more. Whatever sounds like a good color combination, or try different techniques here. I really did try a few of these, and some of them I liked, some of them I did not like. And again, I'm not the expert here. I'm a beginner just like you, so I'm always trying to learn new things as I go. I feel like the stem we put here, again, was really thick, but it kind of looks like one of those little wispy feathers. And so let's just go back into that one with some of the aqua and add back in a stem. Maybe we just have it go down like this. Kind of went off my page, but that's okay. Here we go. And this one looks really nice. Maybe we'll do one more, like a little short one. So another kind of technique that I tried was to let the watercolor kind of feather out like a feather. So maybe we can do a little down feather for our last one here. So, which colors? Does anybody have any ideas for colors? What we should make our last one? You can drop your color choice in the chat. While we're waiting for a color choice, I'm going to go ahead and basically start by painting this with clean water. So again, we're gonna do our little line there. Again, just with clean water at this point. And then we're gonna make the shape of a feather, but make it a little bit bigger than you actually want the feather to be, because we're gonna let this kind of blend and bleed a little. Well, we want to get like the blossoms here, and so we don't want to fill out the whole shape with color. We're just want to give it somewhere to move. Make sure it's nice and wet. We really don't want this to dry while we do this one. And I don't see any colors choices in the chat, so let's go ahead and let's choose orange. All right, I haven't done an orange one yet, so this will be fun. Mixing up my orange, it's a little bit watery. What I'm going to do here is, again, this is all wet, as I'm going to form that stem, and then as I come up here, I'm not going to go all the way to the edge. I'm just going to kind of start dipping my brush into the wet area and letting it bloom. Make these like little really feathery texture. Again, you don't want to go all the way to the edge because the watercolor will continue to move after we've laid down the paint. Just kind of let it feather out. Again, I feel like my stem is a little bit wide here, but again, that's completely okay. So that should kind of give us a nice little texture. If you want to still add some additional little wispies, you know, those little down feathers have, I feel like little feather pieces going every which direction. Make it a little bit more airy. The other thing you can do here is if you do fill up your space, is you can take some clean water and kind of put it around the outside of your feather. And mine's a little bit tinted because I didn't quite keep all my water dry, but you'll get that same effect and it will continue to move. You can use a damp clean brush to sop some of that up if you'd like. And then for this one, to add some dimension, we'll add in some darker orange. First, I'm gonna, now that I've let that kind of expand, it's going to sop up some of the extra water so it doesn't keep moving with a dry paper towel. All right, so now let's go in with some darker orange and add the middle piece. As this dries, it will be a little bit more friendly with this technique. So I'm trying to get straight paint on my brush, not very much water at all, because I don't want this to move much when it gets there. I want it to still kind of stay in the area. And then we can do some of the wispy bits with this darker orange. I turn my paper a lot if that helps you, especially like with these feathers, trying to get the right shapes or get those C curves to work out in your favor. That is totally up to you. I don't know, I'm not feeling this orange one as much as the others, but that's okay. I feel like if I put brown in it, it might look more like a leaf. Maybe that's why it's looking like a leaf to me. So let's add some more of those little wispy bits in the bottom. Makes it look a lot less like a leaf. And I kind of want to add some blue to it, but I know that blue and orange are opposite, so it's going to make brown. But we could add maybe a little bit of red. So I'm going to go in with the red and just kind of drop some of that in the center. Maybe pull a little bit out here and there. And then you can kind of let it move. I like to pick up my paper sometimes and help it along. Just try out some different techniques. See what you like. You might not like everything, and that's okay. Now that our middle one's dried, we can add maybe some of the lines, detail lines here. As much or as little as you like. In addition to adding color, you can also remove color. So I'm going to rinse off my brush really well, dry it off, and you should be able to lift up anything that's still wet. You can see that showing up underneath. So that's another way to add some texture to these little feathers. Last one here, I think I'm just going to maybe grab a little bit more of my darker color and go back over my stem, darken up some of the other areas that we made brown. And I want this to kind of move a little bit still, but I kind of like the pink color that's underneath. So what I'm going to do after I put the brown down is just use some clean water to kind of get it to move a little bit. So dip my brush, getting some water. I did tap it on my paper towel so it's not sopping wet, and then you can just kind of gently rub at it a little bit and start to move that pigment around. Same thing here on the bottom. You want to make it look a little bit more blended. And then I do think I'll go into this one with a little bit more of my pink because I like this color a lot. So there you go, 4 different feathers. I hope this gives you some ideas. And can't wait to see, I know a lot of people already posted their feather work in our group. So if you're new to us and haven't done this yet, I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and it gave you some ideas, and can't wait to see your artwork in the group. So thank you all, happy painting, and have a great day.